Hello, and welcome back for the fourth time to the lecture on synchronous agreement in the course on distributed systems and security. So I'm going, we're chewing our way, as I said before, through this quite extensive menu here on synchronous agreement. So far we have seen that if you have signatures, then you can run the Dulles Strong protocol and agree on what a broadcaster wants to broadcast in a system of n servers against any number of Byzantine corruptions. So even if 98 out of 100 servers try to confuse the two remaining honest ones, they will output the same message and the intended one if the sender is honest also. That's pretty wild. I mean, only 2% honest parties and you can still not be confused by the other ones. And then we saw that signatures are important because if you only have authenticated channels but no signatures, then you can in fact only do this if you have up to strictly less than 1/3 corruptions, like 33 out of 100. What I want to talk about now is a very related problem called Byzantine Agreement. So let's talk Byzantine Agreement in the synchronous model. The Byzantine Agreement problem is a voting style problem. Okay, so there's a lot of variations of it, but I'm going to focus on the very, very simplest one, which crystallizes the problem. So each party will have a single input, which is called the vote. It's a bit, 0 or 1. I'm happy, not happy. My database is ready for committing, it's not ready for committing. Something in a distributed system. I would like to access the printer, something like that. Okay. And then each of them will also have an output called the decision. The termination rule is just that if we have them all start running in the same round, they also have to terminate at some point and terminate in the same round. That's the usual one. So if they all get an input, a bit in round 7, then by some round 2000 or something, they should all make a decision. Then there's the usual agreement and validity conditions, meaning that they should agree and they should be on something reasonable. So the agreement one is easy, just means they should agree. If we have two honest parties, BI and BJ, and they make a decision, make decisions DI and DJ, it should be the same decision always. Validity here, meaningfulness, we will make it pretty minimal and say they're not always allowed to output 0, so to say. I mean, because we could get agreement if we just say the protocol is always output 0, no matter what the inputs are. So we're going to say if all the honest parties input 1, the output must be 1. Okay, so if everyone agrees that we're happy, then we should agree that we're happy. And if everyone inputs 0, then the output must be 0. But that's the only two conditions. If everyone gives the same input, that must become the output. Now, since there's only two possible inputs, 0 and 1, there's a sneaky way to say this, actually, which is, I think, the one we use in the book, which is to say that my output must be the input of some honest party. That's the only condition. Then, of course, if everyone inputted the same, that's the only one I can output. Okay. So validity is just that I must output something that was the input of an honest party. Okay. That's the problem. It has applications in many places in distributed systems. It could, for example, be that, let's say we were in the standard setting by now with replicated services. I had, my service running on 4 different servers, and now one of them crashed, and maybe we ran some recovery procedure. After running the recovery procedure, we all exchange like a hash of our view. I mean, what is the database on my disk now? I'll tell everyone else. Just to make sure that we're in the same state. And then if we're all in the same state, we would like to progress, okay? But that's the usual problem here, namely that it could be that someone reports one view to someone and another view to someone else. So what we really want to know is, I mean, we want to take a common decision, 0 or 1, will we progress or not? What we can do is everyone exchange views, everyone check whether everyone else agrees with them, and if so, they vote 1, they're happy. Otherwise, they vote 0. If we run a Byzantine agreement, we can see that if the output is a 1, it means that at least one honest party inputted 1. And that means it saw that everyone that reported to it reported the same as itself. In particular, everyone agreed. So it would be healthy to proceed. Also, if the output is 0, then by validity, at least one honest party inputted 0. So at least one honest party saw conflicting reports. So it seems healthy to stop. So Byzantine agreement in this setting is exactly what you want. Okay. So let's see how to do it. Turns out to be very simple if you already know how to do broadcast. First a little triviality here. So I mean, not much changed on the slide here. So what is new was this part down here. That Byzantine agreement is impossible if exactly half of the servers could be corrupted. So if I have 4 servers and 2 of them could be corrupted, I cannot solve the Byzantine agreement. And it's kind of just a stupid definitional problem, right? Because we have formulated validity to say that if all honest parties have the same input, then they must output the same. Can you see why that then implies that no matter what you do, you cannot tolerate more than half corruptions? You can pause if you want to think a little bit more than I say it. Yeah, as you probably figured out. I mean, let's say, for example, I have 4 servers. 2 of them send 0, and 2 of them send 1. And 2 of them are corrupted, either these 2 or these 2. I'm not going to tell you, but 2 of them are corrupted. But they run the protocol honestly. Okay? So we just corrupted in a very abstract sense in that we allowed the adversary to run them, but it will run them honestly. Right? So 2 vote 0, 2 vote 1, and you must output what the honest parties are outputting. But I'm not going to tell you which ones they are because I'm just going to have them follow the protocol. If it's these 2 that's corrupted but follow the protocol, you have to output 0. If it's these 2, you have to output 1, and you don't know which one, so you can't. It's just a triviality that you cannot do voting, so to say. You cannot do majority voting and have the honest parties win if the honest parties are not in majority. That's just how it is. Okay, but otherwise we can actually do this. Okay, so let's solve all other cases. Good. So let's say we want to do Byzantine agreement. That's a very simple way to do it, not particularly efficient, but simple if we already know how to broadcast. Namely, we just have everyone broadcast their vote, and then we just take majority, right? That was simple. And of course, you need to do a Byzantine broadcast. It should be that when I vote, I cannot send 0 to some parties and 1 to some other ones. But otherwise, it votes. Otherwise, it works, right? Everyone will Byzantine broadcast their vote. Everyone will receive the same vote from everybody. So if we just look at the set of votes that someone receives, this will be the same vector for everybody. Then we just make a deterministic rule on that one, and it would be take the majority value. It only contains 0s and 1s, so there is one of them that has at least more than half votes. Take that one. Okay. And now, if less than half of the parties are corrupted, and there is a bit that has more than half the parties' votes, at least one honest party voted for that value, so we have validity. And we have agreement because everyone takes majority over the same values. So that was simple. And we can go the other way. If we can do a Byzantine agreement, then we can also do broadcast, because we can use a Byzantine agreement to do a broadcast. I'll show you how to do it for a single bit. And then there's an exercise in the book that will ask you to do it for larger messages. But let's say I wanted to broadcast a single bit, and I already know how to do Byzantine agreement. Then what we do is we have the sender send the bit that she wants to broadcast to everyone. And then they just take that as their input to the Byzantine agreement. So they'll do a vote on what they received. Now, if the sender is honest, and less than half the parties are corrupted, the sender will send the same thing to everybody. So more than half of them, in particular, some honest party, or let's put it differently, all honest parties will vote the same, and therefore the Byzantine Agreement will make that the decision. We can just take that to be the broadcasted value. And if the sender is corrupted and sends zeros to some parties, ones to someone else, and maybe nothing to some of them, doesn't matter, because they will input something to the Byzantine Agreement, and then by agreement of the Byzantine Agreement, they will all decide the same. And that's all we need when the sender is corrupted in a broadcast, that the receivers output the same. So that was also easy. If you want to broadcast more bits, you could just do this trick many times in parallel, but it means if you wanted to broadcast a 1000 bit message, you have to run 1000 Byzantine agreements, which is going to be very costly. There's an exercise in the book asking you to do it using only one. Okay, so you have to broadcast a 1000 bit message using only one Byzantine agreement. It's actually a funny exercise. Try to do it. Okay, that's it. So we see that broadcast and Byzantine agreement, at least in the range where Byzantine agreement is possible, they're very closely linked to each other. If you can do one, you can also do the other. It's only a question about efficiency. But if we're talking about can it be done or not, is it possible or impossible, it's the same problem. Okay, so they're only different up to kind of efficiency. In particular, we can conclude that the Byzantine agreement cannot be solved with just authenticated channels if you have 1/3 corruptions, right? Because if we could solve it for, let's say, 30 servers out of which 10 could be corrupted, I could just use the protocol I just showed you, and then from that Byzantine agreement, use that to do broadcast in the same setting. So I could do broadcast with 1/3 corruptions, and I know I can't. I talked about that in a previous video, right? So the impossibility results from broadcast, they jump directly to Byzantine agreement and the other way, right? So they're possible whenever the other one is possible. So what do we know by now then about these problems? When is it possible and when is it impossible to do broadcast and Byzantine agreement, our two power tools? So let's first do the negative one. What do we know about when we can't solve these problems? So I'm going to have broadcast here and say, can I do broadcast with authenticated channels? We know that this bound here has to be true. We know if this bound here is not true, then it's not possible. So if I had t equal n divided by 3, it's impossible. So I know that this is optimal. I cannot do it better than for this bound. We talked about that in a previous video. And since this here is n divided by 3 is less than n half, so we're in the range where Byzantine agreement is possible. We also know that this is also optimal for Byzantine agreement, because as I just said, if I could solve Byzantine agreement, for example, for t equal n/3, I mean, I could also solve broadcast in that setting, and I can't. Right? So I also know that Byzantine agreement on this here holds. I argued because of a triviality, Byzantine agreement in any setting, also in particular, even if I give you signatures, is impossible on this t is less than n half, simply because voting doesn't make sense if the corrupted parties are in majority, because they will just outvote the honest ones. And we have seen that, I mean, in fact, it's never impossible. Broadcast, you can do that always. We might think that we need less than everyone being corrupted, but actually not. We can also do broadcast if everyone is corrupted, because there's no guarantees, right? If everyone is corrupted, agreement and validity are trivial. The honest parties agree because there are no honest parties. I should have less than or equal to here, but let me keep a sharp less than. Okay. So that's the negative bounds. We know that we cannot solve these problems unless these bounds are true. And as you might have realized, we actually know that these bounds are also optimal. So we can solve them when these bounds are true. I showed you Dolph Strong that solves Byzantine, solves broadcast with signatures whenever for any t. And since I can use broadcast to implement Byzantine Agreement, I can just take that protocol, I can use live strong, have everyone broadcast their vote and take majority. And then I just solve Byzantine Agreement with signatures for t less than half. And I showed a complicated protocol in the previous video, which used t less than n third corruption to emulate signatures, and then use live strong to run. So we know how to use authenticated channels to do broadcast when t is strictly less than n third. So I can just use that broadcast protocol to have everyone broadcast their vote and then take majority, and then I have Byzantine Agreement for this part. Okay. So we brought ourselves to a point where we have two power tools, broadcast and Byzantine Agreement, and two quite natural settings, namely signatures in the setting with only pairwise authenticated channels, and we know exactly when we can solve these problems, and we have protocols. Okay, that's good work. That's not everyone in the world that knows how to do that. So thank you for staying with me that long.